Hi, everyone, and welcome. Happy Monday. We're excited to spend some time with Todd Harrison, founder and CEO of CB1 Capital Management, spending some time talking about some fresh signals out of Washington in the cannabis space, talking through if it is real change or just noise, as well as the impacts on rescheduling in the cannabis industry. If you're out there and you're joining, one, thanks. Really appreciate you starting off your week with us. And two, if you have any questions or comments, you're always welcome to throw them in the chat as we go along. With all that said, Todd, thanks for joining. How is your week starting out?
It's okay.
So.
It's okay. Do you hear a buzz on the phone here? An echo? No,
I don't.
Okay,
Do you hear
good.
my side?
Now it's better. Yeah. No, it's okay. I mean, I'll tell you, as that press conference just started with Trump, I was a little bit suspect on whether we would get a question given the subject matter of.
I feel like that is the news. Let's pull it back just for a little bit, just to start at Friday, just because I feel like there are a lot of people, obviously in the cannabis space, who have been tracking this and have been very excited over the weekend for the week to start again. But talk us through sort of, what happened last week, implications, and then we'll definitely get into, I guess, this morning's Q&A with Trump.
Yeah, apologies. So, it was Friday Night Lights. It was Friday at 9:00. The Wall Street Journal broke a story that President Trump had told donors at a dinner last month that he was going to look at rescheduling cannabis. And that got everybody excited throughout the weekend. CNN also had a story. You saw both sides of the debate sort of weigh in. There was a little bit of fervor, obviously, from those who have been in this journey for some time. And I think, coming in this morning, my question was whether we get a question at the press conference that Trump was holding at 10:00. Given it was such a big topic over the weekend. And I wrote this morning on Subs, on X Subs, that the fact that he didn't call it, fake news, Wall Street Journal, was sort of the low-key tell. But this syncs with what we've been hearing, which we can talk about now, I guess, which is, September and the fall. That's what, was the worst kept secret around the space, but nobody wanted to talk about because we've been nut punched so many times. Him turning around and saying to Pam Bondi at the press conference, what do you think? We'll have a decision in the next few weeks. Was, I think, that's the whatever the opposite of low-key tell is. That's the president telling you we're gonna have a decision in the next couple of weeks. I thought personally that the way he couched the response, and again, the context of this press conference was law and order in DC. He's has the National Guard coming to clean up DC. It's all about making DC safe again. So I initially thought that maybe this wasn't the right venue for a question, and then sure enough, the first question was, given this is your law and order agenda, and given that there are these reports out there that you're going to reclassify cannabis, how do you how do those two jibe? And his initial response was about protecting kids and about the potential. Some people hate it, and then he turned and talked about how he has friends in the medical side who talk about what a blessing it is. I'm paraphrasing, and I just think the way that it was couched, it was perfect for if you're a bull in this space, because he left the door open for a decision either way, right? A binary decision. And there's a lot of people who don't want to get involved or won't get involved until there's actually a decision. And you're going to have, over the next couple of weeks, a lot of speculation. We all see the charts. I think every chart has the same sort of breakaway look to it right now. There's upside gaps from the election that, don't seem as far-fetched as they maybe did last week. Sorry. I think, for me, the benefit of the news cycle over the weekend, given the technical setup, was about as serendipitous as you can get. Because if you were watching these charts, they're all, and some of them, in particular the ETF, had this peek through a lot of resistance. And I think when people heard this story, the first thing they do is, sorry, give me 1 second.
I'd imagine it's a busy time for you. I feel like this is gotta be the time where everyone is wanting to chat and figure out what's going on and, make sense of some
Yeah,
things.
sorry. Apologies. I just think that the way that it's couched is a very good
Thing.
is a good is the best possible setup for the Bulls because you have that uncertainty out there. We personally, as we've said on the show and as we've written, and as Weldon, more importantly, has said, because he's the man in the arena, he thinks that Trump's going to follow through. He talked about some of the initiatives that we had going on, including the letter to the president that Mike Tyson signed, along with others like Kevin Durant and Allen Iverson and John Sally and others. And Weldon had mentioned, that there have been discussions around trips to the White House and to DC. So I'll leave that there. But through that lens, it's sort of hard to envision a no. Hey, we're going to leave it where it is after all that. After making a campaign promise, it just doesn't jibe. But it's not. We don't know until we know, and when we know, we'll know. And hopefully, let's take it a step further. Jesus, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Um,
You don't know what's gonna happen ultimately when, but I do think ultimately probably Trump giving at least a time frame for when he's gonna make a decision is the biggest thing, and again, a surprise ultimately, and, I don't think anyone was
Yeah,
expecting.
that's sort of like tying in the conversation. So to me, that was above and beyond
Yeah.
sort of what I was expecting, right? And that to me is, if I'm short, I'm on notice, right? And if I'm not, if I am one of the many people that tapped out over the last 6 months, 8 months, year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. I mean, it's been a long road, right? So, if I've tapped out, I mean, listen, I think, you know, I pinged my friend last week. I've known this fellow as long as I've been trading. It's what, 35 years since I started on the street. He's still active, whips him around. And I got in his ear a couple of weeks ago and I was like, buy some of these names. And I basically got back a good luck, never touching them again. And I think that's a lot of people, after what we've gone through as an industry, and these stocks have just gotten decimated, right? But what does Schedule 3 mean, right? I mean, ultimately, you say like, okay, like what's going to really change here? And I would say, I mean, listen, aside from the obvious, which is taxes, I think that the halo effect on everything from Pennsylvania to safe banking, it changes the optionality on those, right? So ultimately, I think Schedule 3 is the first step in a progression. I think, and this is my opinion, and I've been wrong before, I think Trump's already told us what he's going to do, right? He's already told us that he wants to reschedule it. He's already told us that he wants banking. He's already told us that clemencies, and he's told us about states' rights. Right? So we've already seen states 2.0 introduced. I think if we get Schedule 3, I think that opens the door to the sequence following through, and that sequence, if we get that, is that's the holy grail, right? Because I mean, ultimately it's all about custody and it's all about uplisting for the stocks I'm talking about, for the industry. Those are the things that have mattered for society. I think the ramifications are huge. The ability to research the plant would be huge. The ability to get people out of prison, obviously, that's why a lot of us have been fighting as we have. And then you have, those who are like deschedule or bust. And it's like, no, we've tried that before, right? We've done that with a Democratic, in a blue wave, trying to really just unleash the beast, and didn't get, perfect was the enemy of good over and over and over again. We saw it with Cory Booker and Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden, and no, let's get a first down. Let's take the W and let's focus on banking, and let's focus on states 2.0, which I think, will which will ultimately, come maybe not next year, but before the president leaves office. So, I mean, that's what he has said. The space was there was an evacuation, a capitulation, whatever you want to say. We saw it. He had a perfect double bottom in the ETF. And ultimately, like I said, as you get more eyes to the space and they pull up the chart and they're like, whoa, look at this. In a world where everything's so extended and everything's so frothy, there's not real many sort of setups like this. And, as anybody who's looked at this industry or lived in this industry over the last 5 years will tell you, it's sort of sucked watching everything sort of rip to all-time highs and everyone get wealthy on crypto. And cannabis is the worst performing sector maybe in history up until my birthday on June 23rd, when we hit the double bottom. So we'll see what happens, but certainly having the president tell us that we're going to get a decision in the next couple of weeks just changed the complexion of year end.
Yeah, I think, again, a good setup. I think definitely a sector that is incredibly undervalued.
Great setup.
Yeah,
it's hopefully not a good setup. It's a perfect setup.
Yeah.
Right. Whether it follows through remains to be seen. But you had what was it in April, March, April? You had that first low, and then retest on lower volume, and then and everyone capitulating. So I mean, the setup's perfect. Whether we get the president to follow through, that's for everyone to make that decision, because if he doesn't, there's just, it's all over but the shouting. Like, we're literally betting the industry on the fact that he's going to follow through on his word, because the other administration didn't.
I think
we think he will. So
yeah, I do think it's different with him giving himself a time frame to get that done, because it's rather than just saying, maybe it could happen in a half a year, at the end of 2025. I think setting a very tight deadline relatively too, I think, seems to make it important among a lot of the things he's working through. So.
And keep in mind, there's going to be lawsuits. I mean, Shane Pennington's the expert here, but there's going to be lawsuits. There's going to be people who, try to challenge this. But I think it was Trump's own DOJ has already said that, the ALJ is ineffectual and won't be honored by the DOJ. And Pam Bondi, she was standing right next to the president during the press conference an hour ago. And,
it was true in there, I think, right? It was like all the high profile, obviously having the AG, super important.
Yeah. But let's shift gears for a second, because the other thing this morning, and not to be overlooked, was Village Farms earnings.
True. Yes, I did.
And, we've talked about Village on this show for some time, and particularly post the spinoff of the produce. They just blew out numbers this morning. NASDAQ listed stock. Like I've said, this is, I said, I think I phrased it, the cleanest international play in cannabis last time we were on the show. But now I would argue it's probably, the single best international cannabis play out there. Keeping in mind that the stock is up, I think, 420%, almost on the nose, since the April low. You have, looking forward, an entirely new company, right? Effectively, the cleanest balance sheet. You have legal and compliant operations in Canada, the Netherlands, Germany, UK, Australia, New Zealand. Strong leadership, deep bench, low cost, high quality. I mean, this used to be a $20 stock a couple of years ago. And I know you can't look at past performance as an indication of future returns, but I would argue this is a much better company than it was 4 years ago. So that is one that, we were very happy to see. This has been, I think this was the first company that we published research on in 2017. It was actually August 23rd of 2017. So it'll be 8 years in about 10 days, or however long it is, 12 days. So that's a long time. And we watched this company. I don't personally think they really got enough credit for the patience they demonstrated while everybody else was chasing the shiny object. But hell of a report by Mike and Ann and John and Sam and that team and what they're doing over there.
That's true. And one, I think, that does have that great optionality into the US when things hopefully change, right?
Yeah, they have Texas, and Texas, as Mike, thank you for that,
Of course.
touched on this morning, follows the federal guidelines. So if we move to Schedule 3, what does that mean for Texas? And I profess to know the answer. I don't think Mike knew the answer, but it's not going to hurt. And they have capacity in Texas, and certainly. But I think what sets them apart, really, what sets them apart is I'm ADD and I'm watching. I'm waiting for.
I can hear a lot of tweets and alerts and different crazy things. Anything that you can share as things are popping off?
Yeah, I apologize. No, I was going to say what sets them apart is, is the rigor and the how they worked with every province in Canada, and them doing that on an international level, working with these countries and best practices. And it's just it's just 3D chess, right? And you got 36 years or 38 years, one of the two, of cultivation and experience. And I think probably the best operator. As Mike would say, they're not a Canadian company, they're a US company, and Canada just happens to be their first international market.
Yeah.
I thought that was a clever way to look at things, right? And the other thing is the produce is no longer a drag, but it's a dividend. So ultimately, I feel like that's going to be a vehicle, right, for the masses, because it is on NASDAQ, and as more people look to the space, you have international growth that up until an hour ago had a much cleaner line of sight than where the US is. Now you have a lot of eyes starting to come into the space.
Yeah, I will say the changes that they made and sort of the position that they made more towards the US, that seemed to be well timed in terms of hopefully what we see, or at least I guess the news and the timelines that have been laid out, which is important. Yes, agree. I think you're getting a lot of updates, and I feel like you always have your eyes on everything that's coming through. And I know a lot of people are talking to you, so a lot of different alerts. Well, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I forgot if we talked about this during the show, or if it was like in the green room. But like I, was up early this morning and had the village call and was planning on showering and getting all primed for this, and just never happened because the Trump presser led to. So apologies on the was not. I forgot that we had this nooner today because it's usually on Wednesdays.
That is true. Totally appreciate you making the time. And I know, when things are busy and positive and there's a lot of good movement, of course, you want to try to make sure that you're in the mix and following it. So appreciate the dedication there. A shower can wait eventually at some point. But did want to talk. So, speaking of Village Farms and kind of how they're running things, obviously, a good team is always important in whatever industry you're in, but especially in kind of what has been in a kind of pressure cooker a little bit for a while. Is there anything else that you're looking to as we're potentially on the cusp? We'll have to see, obviously, of rescheduling and real change. Anything else that you're looking at, even from, seeing previous, earnings from this last quarter that you're looking at to say like, this will really best benefit these types of.
I mean, it's funny. We had earnings last week, and I'm just watching all of the negative Nancy's talking about how nothing has changed, and Trump could do anything, it could go either way. And I think it's just perfect. It's just, if he came out and said he was going to do it, then, we would rally into the decision, and then you sell the news or whatever it is. But I think this changes the complexion of the DNA, which is good in a good way. But it was funny because we had so many earnings last week, and here we are, and it's we have 10 minutes left in the show. We haven't even talked about the earnings because there's so much going on. Mm-hmm. I thought, obviously, I was bracing, as we talked about, for just more of a shit show. And to be sure, certainly weren't like great earnings, I mean, with the certain exceptions, right? You had certain names that stood out to me from just the fundamental side would. Obviously, Village Farms. I thought Cannara Biotech, love on the Canadian. I thought C21. I'm on the board there. They continue to chug along, the little engine that could. But by and large, like from the MSO standpoint, it was better than I thought. But if you're a generalist or a tourist, a trading tourist,
Mhm.
or an investor generalist, you look at these and you're like, okay, where's the growth? Where's the, what are we excited about here? And if you didn't know the sector, you're like, I don't get it. Why are these names rallying the way they are when the fundamentals are as they are? And like I said, I think it's, we'll see what we get with rescheduling. The question is this exit liquidity for certain positions, or is this the time to buy certain positions? And the answer is yes.
I was going to say, yeah, it feels like it's a mix for whoever you are. There are some people who are probably using it to get out of the space entirely. Some people who are entering again, lots of different types of investors out there.
Yeah, I mean, have your names like, Village, for instance, like we came in long today, but I just want to buy the dips. Like when it dipped back down to 2, we added to it because we're like, this is going to be a vehicle and a name, and one you probably want to put away for a while. So, but there's going to be some names that are going to get the rising tide, and you're going to want to use that liquidity to move into higher quality names for sure. There just hasn't been that liquidity in the sector for so long, and that's changed now. So, and it's probably going to, I think when we saw the HHS leak in August of 2023, almost exactly 2 years ago, I think it was the last day of August or the second to last day of August, if memory serves. I think we saw prices double effectively in 10 days. And that was on whispers of, or on the recommendation from the HHS, not the decision from the DOJ, which is the last, well, maybe not the last step on the line because you have the lawsuits, but pretty much the last official step, is that final rule, which again, among other things, will allow 280 to stop accruing. And then we start to figure out what does that a certain tax provision look like, how is that reconciled, etc. But we'll see what happens.
I think that's true. Hopefully that doesn't mean we've sort of been here before and it's a similar thing. Hopefully it is sort of that break where it does look like something real and does eventually actually, again, it seems like we'll see that in the next little bit. Let's see some questions really quickly here. Feel free to get any final questions in. Definitely, again, agree that we need more steps after this, whether that's, it would be ideal to get scheduling at some point, but definitely the uplisting, huge element there. Gary, I see your question on buying in the ETF. We don't know exactly who purchased in. Again, that's just the nature, I think, of ETFs, but I wish I knew, but good to see, I think, the general volume be up there. I haven't checked recently, but some pretty strong volume and a great way, I think, to get access ultimately to that theme. This is a great question. I feel like you used to do challenges or little like fun things. No showering in the schedule.
Well, I shaved.
That's like a week.
So there was that. I got the shave. I got the goatee gone, and it seems to be working so far. But if the shower thing, I mean that's like you're talking drug box at that time.
That would be rough. That would be worth if it somehow correlated and did lead to a causation. I would say do it, but yeah, I think in the worst case we'll wait on that. All right. Well, then I think as we're heading into hopefully firming up some certainty and hopefully some real changes, any expectations in terms of kind of I'd imagine the volatility is, even though we're seeing some positive movement, which is great, more volatility, not to expect less in that short term as things change over.
Yeah, I think you just got to sync your time horizon with your risk profile. If you're a trader, trade them. If you're an investor, take a walk. Right? Yep. I mean, maybe not literally, or maybe literally. It's beautiful outside, I'm told. But or do both. Like we do a little bit of both, right? We want to, there's some names that we know. Like when we saw Canada come online, they came for the big four. It was. Embarrass myself. Canopy, Aurora, I think MedRelief, and Afria, right? Those were the four. But my point is, like, there's going to be a FANG type of grab toward the largest names, but you're going to see, I think, better performance, at least in the short term, from some of the tails that
needed it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and there's some real good names. I mean, as I look across some of these names today, I mean, obviously everything's higher today, but the smaller names that have maybe not had the fundamentals that some of the bigger names have are outperforming. So Those are probably the names you want to lighten up on the way up. And, then on dips, you rotate into some of the better quality names that are more durable, and you get away from beta into more value, or at least, the closest you can to value in this space. So
if you're trading around it, that is a way to look at it potentially. Yeah. Or I think having exposure, but sort of weighted exposure can, make a difference, I think, on that too. Yes. Okay. The showering thing is gaining some traction. Don't worry. You're allowed to shower. And yeah, I don't think your wife would be super keen on the no shower front. All right. Well then, yeah. Okay. I think sort of final question is there anything you're keeping your eye on? It seems like, again, a lot of positive news from this weekend and this morning. Is there anything at all that gives you sort of pause, worry? I know you're very, in tune with Weldon and what he's working on and everything there. Is there anything that kind of gives you hesitation, or is it all sort of like it's coming together? It's been a lot of work.
Everything gives me hesitation. Being in this space for as long as I've been, everything that we've been conditioned to expect is, there's no, you had said to me before, I expected you to be a little bit more chipper. And I'm like, have you, sure, first rodeo here? I do think this is different. Sure. I also know those are dangerous words in the market. But I think the setup is pristine. I think that the way that it was contextualized was perfect in terms of building a wall of worry into, I guess, September. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot to be excited about, not just, for the stocks, but for those who have been fighting for change for as long as some of us have, to actually get the first down, to actually move the chains for the first time, and to open the door for things like Pennsylvania, things like safe banking, things like stage 2.0 and clemencies. I think if the president does indeed follow through as we expect him to on Schedule 3 within the next couple of weeks, I don't think there's any reason to suspect that he's not going to follow through with the rest of his campaign pledges.
That is exciting to hear. All right. That sounds awesome. Todd, thanks for taking the time. Again, I do think it's great to have that balanced approach, not get too excited, even though it is tempting, I think, to get a little excited in light of what we've seen. But again, you're right. I think you got to temper your expectations a little bit. But we'll definitely be checking in with you in 2 weeks. And that'll be an interesting time period, because also I think that kind of fits in along with when he's talking about having a decision on the rescheduling. So definitely looking forward to that.
I'm sure it'll be the same day.
Honestly, if we could time it again, that would be perfect. All right. Well, I think that's fantastic. Everyone, thanks for joining. Really appreciate it. Todd, thanks again, as always. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Just be smart.
Perfect. Words to live by. All right. That sounds good. Todd, thanks again. Really appreciate it. And everyone, we'll catch you tomorrow with Dan Aarons to talk more about the cannabis space. Thanks again. All right. Bye.
Before investing, carefully consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses found in the prospectus, available at AdvisorShares.com.